Now, if it's one thing the American people despise, it's the corruption of money in our political system. You got poll after poll, all across the political spectrum, where Americans have overwhelmingly said that money has too much influence on our elections, right? And especially when it comes to outside dark money. Now, look, you'll see a lot of Republican ads, especially coming up in the midterms, but we've seen it in a lot of these special elections as well, where they'll run ads like, Nancy Pelosi's outside special group spending money in our local elections. Do you want Nancy Pelosi running our state? Stuff like that. And so, yes, that's basically saying we don't like outside money. We especially don't like outside dark money, where we don't know who's actually spending it. It could be the unions. It could be, who knows what kind of liberal cause getting in our state and local business, right? So, and look, a lot of Democrats also hate outside money from people like the Koch brothers, right? Now, dark money is actually even worse than that because, again, we don't know who's actually donating that money, okay? But look, that hatred of outside money, it's not an accident, right? Those ads against dark money are not an accident. In fact, according to conservative polling organization Rasmussen, 76% of likely U.S. voters believe that the wealthiest individuals and companies have too much influence over elections, and even more voters agree that wealthy special interest groups have too much power and influence over elections. And of course, that poll was taken back in 2016. So, look, Americans don't like money in politics, and even more so, they don't like dark money in politics. Now, here's the thing, right? Now, to give you a great example of how much conservatives don't like that money in politics, I want to go to Tempe, Arizona. Now, they had voted overwhelmingly to increase transparency in their elections so that they basically say, you can't hide these donations. We get to know who your donors are. So we get to know at least who bought you, right? Now, this is the first time a state has moved to ban local governments from basically shining a light on secret dark money spending. Now, this type of spending happens to be very consequential at the local level, according to experts. Why? It's because local elections are relatively cheap and receive actually very little media coverage, right? So if you're a dark money group, you come in, you spend a few $1,000s, local TV ads or mailers, and that could end up making a gigantic difference. Now, people in Tempe, Arizona, they were not a fan of that. So over 90% of all voters had cast ballots for an amendment to the city's charter requiring all groups spending more than $1,000 on local races to disclose their donors back in March. So they took the step and said, okay, we don't like dark money, so we're going to ban it. We're going to get rid of it. Now, how did the state respond, the state of Arizona? Well, about as well as you'd expect. According to Newsweek, in response to the Tempe vote, the Republican-controlled Arizona legislature passed a bill last week that bans local governments from requiring nonprofit groups, the most common dark money vehicles, to disclose the source of their funding. The bill, which passed both chambers on a strictly party-line vote, is headed to Republican Governor Doug Ducey's desk. So here are the Republicans in the state saying, how dare you? How dare you try to limit outside dark money? That is our primary method of funding. Banned. We're going to ban it. We're going to ban your ban. We're going to stop it immediately. All right. Well, so look, you've got the state government of Arizona saying we love our corruption. Democracy, no, we don't give a damn about your democracy. Your voice doesn't matter. Over 90% of you voted to ban dark money. We're going to overturn that ban. And you guys, you just need to shut up and let our donors drown you in dark money. It's gross, right? So, look, obviously their motivation is to defend their donors. And it turns out that in Arizona, the donors are running wild. In fact, according to Chizun Lee, this is a senior counsel at the Brennan Center for Justice, Arizona is a state where the amount of dark money being spent has skyrocketed in comparison to transparent money, where voters can at least tell who's behind political messaging. Now, she was the lead author in a 2016 report on dark money in state and local elections. And of course, what she did is that her and her co-authors examined spending in 6 states and found that fully transparent political spending in those states accounted for about 3/4 of spending in 2006, but declined to just 29% in 2014. In Arizona, the change was particularly dramatic. Dark money accounted for just $35,000 in 2006. By 2014, that figure rose to more than $10 million. So in 8 years, it went from $35,000 to more than $10 million in dark money spending. That's just in Arizona alone. And again, this is one enormous shift in one state. So, and now Lee says, of course, despite the surge, or maybe because of it, Arizona is singular in trying to keep dark money hidden. I think the state is a great example of what happens when special interests and big donors have to buy off our politicians. That's why, of course, there are other cities and states that pass their own disclosure laws. Now, for example, Denver and Philadelphia have passed laws requiring disclosure of dark money, so it no longer would be dark. It would be transparent. You also had Washington State, whose governor signed a disclosure bill into law earlier this month. New Mexico, whose Secretary of State implemented new disclosure rules back in 2017. And, of course, California. California passed a transparency bill back in October. And finally, Montana passed their own bipartisan transparency bill all the way back in 2015. Turns out the American people, at the very least, want to know who's buying our politicians. Now, I personally would go further, right? I would ban all private financing of election. Get all the money out. Get the corporate money out. Get the union money out. Get it all out. Public financing of elections. Think about it. Instead of your politicians being funded by private donors, they will be funded by everybody, by the people. Now, who do you think they're going to work for when you do that? They're going to work for the people. They're not going to work for the special interests, because there will be no special interest money. You got to get the private financing of elections out. Republicans hate it. Democrats hate it. And look, so does everybody else. Everybody hates it. The only people that love it are the donors and the politicians that get bought by those donors. We have got to get the money out so that we can have democracy back. When something that passes with over 90% support gets overturned by the state legislature, you know that democracy is absolutely broken. We have got to fix it, and we can fix it by getting the money out. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.